Welcome, GOBC students. This is Chem 114, and we're going to keep exploring organic molecules, and we're going to eventually figure out the relationship with them and biological chemistry, which I talked about in the Teams meeting on Thursday, this April 10th. And so it begins. Carboxylic acids, esters, amines, and amides. That's what chapter 14 is all about. Very important because proteins are made of amino acids, and they can contain carboxylic acids and amines and amides and esters we're going to see are in fruits and perfumes. So all of this is great interest to us humans. So we know that our health is important, our environment is important. So chemicals are a big part of that, and we have to be careful how we dispose of waste. Um, Not that these are the most toxic chemicals, such as carboxylic acids and amines. A lot of these things are natural, but just organic chemistry in general, and metals and inorganic chemistry, we have to be careful about how they in fact affect us, infect our environment, and all these good things. So, getting started, we're going to go with carboxylic acids. And I discussed those a little bit with you this past Thursday. And this is where we, instead of having a hydrogen here, we have a hydroxyl group. And when we go from an aldehyde and we oxidize an aldehyde, we get a hydroxyl group there, and we get a carboxylic acid. And I showed a little bit about how this proton can be removed, right? That proton, it's a weak acid. Carboxylic acids are weak acids. And weak acids um, do not disassociate completely, right? Like HCl disassociates completely. HCl is not a weak acid. HCl is not a carboxylic acid. It completely disassociates when it goes into water. Not the case with carboxylic acids. In a typical water solution, only a little bit of only a little bit of the carboxylic acid will lose the proton. What do I mean by losing the proton? This is what happens. Should be able to imagine this. I showed it previously. Losing the proton gives you a negative charge here. The proton is gone, right? So in water, we have a equilibrium of back and forth, right? From the protonated carboxylic acid to the deprotonated carboxylic acid, from the deprotonated carboxylic acid to the protonated carboxylic acid. Remember, it's an acid, so of course it's going to donate protons, but not like HCl. It's not quite that strong. Remember, it's in our human body, so it can be acidic, but we don't want it to be pH 1 or 2, right? A lot of these weak acids, which are carboxylic acids, we've talked about weak acids, but we haven't really talked too much about carboxylic acids in general, except for acetic acid or vinegar. So looking at a couple of these structures to kind of give us an idea what all this looks like. I mean, we know that ethanol has two carbons, but if we make ethanol into a carboxylic acid, we're going to oxidize that, and we're going to end up with more oxygens on that alcohol, what was previously an alcohol molecule. If we reference ethanol going to ethanoic acid, we're adding some oxygens and another carbon oxygen bond and a hydrogen. And we know that we can take a primary alcohol and oxidize it and turn it into an aldehyde. And we can take an aldehyde and we can oxidize it. And we can turn it into a carboxylic acid. So this is vinegar, very common in cooking and other things as well. Fairly safe. We can actually have a little bit of this in our diet. We don't want to drink concentrated vinegar. I don't think that's a good idea. Propanoic acid, again, this can help preserve the pH or lower the pH of foods. And we can digest a little bit of this as well. We don't want to drink pure propanoic acid. And this could have came from propanol, a primary alcohol, which a primary alcohol can be oxidized to an aldehyde, and it can go further into becoming a carboxylic acid. Then we have benzoic acid. We have this benzene ring that has a carboxylic acid instead of a aldehyde. Instead of being benzaldehyde, we now have an extra oxygen. We get benzoic acid. So all cool stuff. Well, how do we name these? Well, we can go back to the original alkane group that has nothing but carbon and hydrogen. And as we add oxygens to methane, we start to get, we add one oxygen, a second oxygen, we add a hydrogen onto that oxygen, and we get methanoic acid, right? We can do the same with ethane on one of these carbons. We can oxidize one of these carbons. Nature can do this. And next thing you know, we have ethanoic acid, and we have the ethanoic acid and methanoic acid do exactly what they say. They donate protons, and they're both what? Acidic. They're weak acids. And make sure you understand what a weak acid is. Here we're trying to name this. The first thing to do is find out what's the longest carbon chain, as we've been doing 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's got to be butane, but the carboxylic acid is here, so it's got to become butanoic acid. And then we have a methyl group on 3, so it's 3-methylbutanoic acid. So we see the carboxylic acid taking precedence. Now we see a molecule with one of these benzene rings, one of these flat pancake-like rings that has 3 pi bonds in it, and it's flat. Okay, so we have the carboxylic acid attached to the ring. Then at another position right next to the carboxylic acid, we have a chlorine, and then we have a second chlorine. So we want to make the acid part of the ring one. And if we would go the other direction and go counterclockwise, we 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The chlorine would end up on 5 and 6. We don't want to do that because we want the lowest number, so we want to go clockwise and we want to make it 1, 2, 3. So we don't have to number the benzoic acid. We can just call that benzoic acid, which we know there is a benzene ring with a carboxylic acid attached and a 2,3-dichloryl, two substituents of chlorine. So very interesting how we can do different things with this ring. We can put up to 6 substituents on this ring. Here, half of those substituents are taken. Okay, so we can change the molecular weight of a ring and change the boiling point and melting point, all sorts of cool things. So now this is kind of just giving you an overview to extend your knowledge, because you know what methane is, and if it's a carboxylic acid version of methane, it's methanoic acid. You know what ethanol is, or ethane. You know if you add a carboxylic acid, it's ethanoic acid. You know what propane is, and if you make it a propanol with alcohol and then you further oxidize it, you could turn it into propanoic acid. And you could do the same with butanol, and then oxidizing it further into the aldehyde, and then oxidizing it even further into the carboxylic acid, you get butanoic acid. And so the common names here of methonic acid, formic acid, that can be used for etching, acetic acid, that's cooking. Propanoic acid can be used as a preservative. Butyric acid has uses in paints and other things. And so what do we have here? Formic acid. Where could that come from in nature? Well, we can make it in a lab, but also insects such as ants can use this as a way to fight off predators and sting their enemies. So it has a little bit of an irritation to the skin. We also have this vinegar that can be used for cooking and give a nice taste to our foods, that gives us variety in our tastes. And so carboxylic acids are pretty important, and you're going to find out that carboxylic acids can combine with an alcohol and make esters. So carboxylic acids and alcohols can react to form esters. We're going to learn about that later. Um, IUPAC, how do we name this? Well, we know that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons. We know that's got to be butane, but it has the carboxylic acid, which is always going to have to be at the end group unless it's a substituent. So it's going to be butanoic acid. But we also have another substituent on the carbon 1. Carbon 2, we have a methyl group. So we're going to know that this is going to be 2-methylbutanoic acid. And if we have 5 carbons, where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons, we're going to get pentane, but since we have a carboxylic acid on here, it's going to be pentanoic acid, and we know that the methyl group is at the 2 position, so it's going to be 2-methyl pentanoic acid. But we have to identify the parent first, and so 2-methyl pentanoic acid it is. Now, if of course, if this 5 carbon was missing, it would be 2-methyl butanoic acid. Now, how do we name this? Well, this is A is not too difficult because we know 1, 2, 3 carbons no matter how we count it. So we're dealing with propane, but we have a carboxylic acid on the end, so it's going to be propanoic acid. And we have a methyl group on the second carbon, so it's going to be 2-methyl propanoic acid. This isn't too difficult either because we know this is a benzene ring. We know the carboxylic acid on a benzene ring gets position 1. We don't have to call it 1 benzoic acid. We just call it benzoic acid, and then we count 1, 2, 3 for where the bromine is, and we make it 3 bromo benzenoic acid. If you made the mistake of going the other direction counterclockwise and said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you would wrongfully name this 5-bromobenzoic acid, which would be incorrect because bromo would have a higher number than it needs to have, right? Opposed to 3 versus 5, depending on the direction you count. So how you count and the number you put on the substituents on the ring, remember the rings receive numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not the benzoic acid. It's at the position 1, but we don't number the carbons of benzoic acid. So there we go. 2-methylpropanoic acid, 3-bromobenzoic acid. We can feel good that we know what we're doing. Now, 4-chlorohexanoic acid. How does this work? How are we going to draw this? So line angle formula means carbons don't always have to have a C written there. We want to sometimes worry about speed and efficiency, and we don't want to draw a nice artwork of fluorochlorohexanoic acid if we have to do something quick because we don't have 3 hours to draw the molecule, although I wish you did. Anyhow, hexanoic acid means what? We have 6 carbons. Hexanoic, and it means hexanoic, we're going to have to put the carbon 1 is going to contain the carboxylic acid, so that's at 1. We don't have to put the 1 in there. And the chloro is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th carbon over, and that's going to be chloro. And so that hopefully is kind of simple, and hopefully it makes kind of some common sense to you. But thank you all, and you have a great day. I will see you soon.